breaking news that should be a surprise to nobody, and nobody should care. And that's that Fear Factor Live has been announced to permanently close at Universal Studios Orlando, aka the show that is basically a manifestation of Sideshow Bob.
You got 5 seconds to kill somebody. Hello, folks.
That's right, folks, a show that really nobody cared about, nobody really liked, and nobody cares to see go, has officially closed. In fact, it's already been closed for basically a year and a half, something like that, because it did close in 2020 when the parks closed. So it's not too surprising news, it's not terribly upsetting news, but it's gone, and you gotta wonder, well, what's gonna go in its place? Well, lucky for you folks, I have the answer, or at least I think I do. So let's get down to it. And listen, I don't want to, twist your arm here, guys, but, last time I predicted something in regards to Fear Factor Live, I was right. But yeah, I would definitely say Shrek is right up there with Men in Black and Fear Factor for what can go next.
Genius alert. Look how smart you are.
Now, to be fair, you didn't have to be a genius to predict that those two rides were probably going next, but still, what can I say? I don't miss, folks. I don't miss. Now, I don't really want to waste your time, especially now with the topic of Fear Factor Live. Nobody really cared for this thing, so I'm not going to give it any sort of fanfare, and we're going to go right into the first, most highly rumored option of what could replace this attraction, and that is another Harry Potter attraction. Now, either you're probably jumping up and down with excitement, or you're groaning right now. Because obviously Universal has a lot of Harry Potter, but it's also some of the best stuff that they currently have at the resort. So yeah, kind of a bittersweet thing, but this attraction would be somewhat unique. It'd be a broom flying attraction using VR technology. The rumor goes that apparently this attraction was supposed to be in Epic Universe as a part of the new Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts Land over there, but instead it was moved over here in Fear Factor's plot once they realized that Fear Factor was probably never going to reopen. Now, a broom flying attraction is something that not only has everybody pretty much wanted since day one once Harry Potter was announced to be coming to the parks, but I think it's something that Universal deep down has wanted to try and pull off. However, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a bit apprehensive about this. I don't love the idea. And I know, you might be grabbing your torches and pitchforks right now, but seriously, here's my problem with it, and really, it doesn't stem from the broom flying thing, it stems from the VR thing, okay? We've seen parks try their hand at VR several times over the last, I don't even know, 5+ years at least, and every single time, VR is very shortly done away with. It does not last, and I think I know exactly why that is. For one, it has very high maintenance and operating costs. I mean, you have to, after every single ride, clean these goggles off and get them ready for the next ride. Unlike 3D glasses for screen rides where you can just take one batch in the back and clean that while you put another batch out for guests to grab, with VR, these things are attached to the ride vehicle. You have to clean them in between each ride, which is a pain for the ride ops, and it's also going to increase not only the wait times, but also, of course, the maintenance and operating costs of the ride. And then number two, I think very quickly, VR is going to become an outdated thing in theme parks. And I think we already are seeing it. I mean, there's a big reason why parks have already kind of started to do away with their VR stuff after they, spent all this money and time putting them in. It's not just because of the maintenance and operating costs. It's because people just aren't that interested in a VR attraction. Bottom line is, VR is becoming more and more available in people's homes all across the country, as well as in arcades and regional parks and boardwalks. I mean, these things are available and are being used by people pretty much everywhere. And let's not forget, folks, you got Meta over there now trying to make the metaverse a thing, basically essentially making it that everybody would now be living in a VR world. So the idea of VR is just not that interesting of a concept. Right, when you talk about going to a theme park, you're looking for unique, immersive experiences, and a VR attraction is just not that, right? I mean, you can basically get a very similar experience just at your home or at an arcade, right? Why do you need to go and pay all this money at Universal to go and experience this thing? It's just not there, right? And we talked about Shrek 4D last video. you know, with that ride, we talked about a big reason why that went was because it was an outdated ride system with the 4D theater. I think as soon as this ride gets plopped down, it's going to be outdated, just like that, right? I think that really the next path to go, if you want to use this sort of technology, would be augmented reality, which of course they used on the Mario Kart attraction over in Japan. But the problem is, of course, you can't really use augmented reality in Fear Factor space. There's just not enough land there for it. That being said, though, I think there still are better ways to do a broom flying attraction if you really want to do it. Just look at Flight of Passage over in Disney. Why not make something like that? And I think we all know the reason why, right? I mean, they've been ridiculed and just made fun of and made the butt of every joke for having too many screen rides. So what do? They try their best. They try their best with the land that they have to make stuff that's not necessarily screen attractions, but kind of is. And VR is where they're going with that. They're like, well, you know, people don't want the screen rides, so let's do VR. And I'm telling you, dude, that is not the path. That is not the path that they want to be going into. I think that you'd be much better off building something like Flight of Passage or Soarin' and doing something along those lines for your broom flying attraction, as opposed to VR, which, like I said, is going to be outdated in 5 seconds. Like, it's just not a smart idea. And how about this for a crazy idea? Why not just ditch the broom flying attraction? I know, Universal, you really want to pull it off. I know, it'd be sick. I understand. You know, fans have been wanting it since day one. You've been wanting to do it since day one. But here's the thing. If it really requires you to do VR, then just don't do it. Take a lesson from your own freaking movie and stop thinking whether or not you could and start thinking about whether or not you should, okay? So, if not Harry Potter, if not the most heavily rumored possibility, what else could replace Fear Factor? Well, one is another attraction that I said could replace Shrek 4D, and that's Secret Life of Pets. I mean, you know, the ride that's sitting next to is Men in Black, which does take place in New York, right? The New York World's Fair. So, I mean, why not put Secret Life of Pets there? I guess it would make a lot of sense, right? It could kind of fit in aesthetically. So, it might not be a bad idea. Kind of make maybe a little bit of a mini land surrounding it. Maybe even have some sort of tie-in with Frank the Pug. That's an idea. Though, I'm not going to kid you. I'm not going to kid me. I don't necessarily see this as the really ideal option either. I mean, I love the attraction. I think that it could work really well, but I don't think this is necessarily the spot for it. I think there are plenty of other places where it works better, like in Shrek's plot. And why do I say that? Well, it's pretty easy to see. I mean, we're talking about making a New York mini-land. Hello? We already have a New York land in this park. How many New York lands do we need, right? So I don't really think it makes sense for Secret Life of Pets to go there. Either it goes in Shrek's plot, or you find somewhere for it to go in New York, which, I mean, really at this point, with Jimmy Fallon still being relatively new and Revenge of the Mummy getting its massive refurb, that's not going to happen. So, well, you really just can't do it here. You can't. Another idea that was actually getting tossed around on my Shrek 4D video was potentially bringing Sing on Tour, a show over in Universal Studios Japan, to the park. And you know what? This was an idea that was actually thrown around quite a bit on the Shrek 4D video. I mean, that's really where I'm getting this from. But, you know, quite frankly, I think it could work in Fear Factor's spot as well. And you know what? Universal's been getting rid of so many stage shows recently with Beetlejuice and Sinbad going away, that it makes a lot of sense why you would replace a show with a show. I mean, you kind of would be interested in keeping some shows around as they are great people eaters. They keep people out of the rest of the park for a substantial amount of time, you know, without them actually having to stand in a line, right? It's much better for them to be sitting in a theater for like 30-ish minutes than for them to be waiting in line for that amount of time. The only problem is that you probably wouldn't need to kind of make it a fully indoor theater. Like, it wouldn't really work with just the awning because you have all these costumes and whatnot. It'd be kind of tough, right? Like, it wouldn't be able to operate in all weather conditions if you kept it as this sort of amphitheater type setup. So you would have to kind of invest some money into the infrastructure in order to make it work. But it honestly is a feasible option, especially if you want to keep the backside of the park like completely just like unthemed. Then yeah, I mean, it's actually a perfect option, and I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. Now, while we're on the topic of replacing Fear Factor with another show, why not consider replacing it with WaterWorld? Now, if you're unfamiliar with the show at Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Japan, and now Universal Studios Beijing, then quite frankly, I wouldn't even be surprised if you don't even know what WaterWorld is at all. WaterWorld is a 3-hour-long disaster of a film that came out in 1995 to absolutely abysmal reception, with it being one of the most notorious box office flops ever. But they decided to make a show for it anyways. And you want to know the craziest part about it, folks? It's actually good. Really good. Like, this show has been critically acclaimed right from day one, and for good reason. I mean, this show is incredible. It's as good of a stunt show you'll ever see, if not the best out there. And I think for most people who are familiar with the show, they're totally down for WaterWorld coming to the Orlando resort. Like, it would be a perfect fit. People would love it here. However, there are 3 big issues with potentially bringing WaterWorld to the resort. One is operating costs. This is not a cheap show to run, and quite frankly, Universal has been phasing out a lot of attractions like this. Look at Disaster, look at Twister. 2, we already have a stunt show in Universal Studios Florida, the same park, with the Bourne Stuntacular, which just opened in 2020. Do we really need another stunt show in the park? Nonetheless, another one opening up just a few years later? And 3, how do you market this attraction? WaterWorld is a no-name IP at this point. It's unknown, it's not relevant, it's not a Harry Potter, it's not a Jurassic Park. Is, building a WaterWorld attraction really gonna bring in the tourists? Is it really gonna boost attendance? I mean, you could sell it on the idea that it's this world-renowned show, aka, one of the best stunt shows to ever exist. But is that going to be enough to draw people in? People come for the IPs, not necessarily just the attractions. So yeah, if you're a diehard Universal fan or a diehard theme park fan, you might be excited about WaterWorld. But if you're a regular tourist and you have no idea what WaterWorld is, then guess what? It's not going to be a draw for you to come out to the park. So, what else can replace Fear Factor Live? Well, let me check my notes here really quick. Oh yeah, that one. I'm going to present you with a very unpopular opinion, a very unpopular option here. And that's that Fear Factor doesn't get replaced with anything. That's that Fear Factor just sits closed, vacant, for several years, similar to Sinbad right now. Of course, Sinbad at least has a reason for being like that, because it's right next to Hagrid, so you can't really easily replace it because it's going to have like noise problems. And then on top of that, of course, it's a part of the Lost Continent, which Universal is just chomping at the bit to replace as a whole. So, Sinbad really is just gonna kind of chill for now, right? And nobody really has a problem with that. Fear Factor, though, I think that might end up facing a similar fate. And here's why. Universal uses that theater for a lot of things. A lot of special events, one of those being Halloween Horror Nights. And quite frankly, over the last few years, at a lot of these events, they've had to build up a lot of pop-up sets, a lot of pop-up stages for these events to really run properly, because they've been getting rid of so many of their stage shows over the past few years. And if they continue with this trend, getting rid of the biggest theater being Fear Factors, well, they're really going to be in a tricky spot in that regard. However, with Blue Man Group closing, that leaves that theater open to kind of fill in the void that Fear Factor left. So they wouldn't have to, leave it around vacant, right? I mean, for instance, they're already using the Blue Man Group for the Grinchmas show. I mean, Blue Man Group's already filling the void. Might as well get rid of Fear Factor completely. Well, here's the thing, folks. Though, yes, they're using Blue Man Group for the Grinchmas show right now, we don't necessarily know what their long-term plans are for the Blue Man Group theater. They might have other plans for it. They might want to replace it with another attraction. Who knows? But then you also got to talk about Fear Factor Live, and you got to consider that this attraction had a pretty massive operating budget for a show that no one really went to go see, right? So, I mean, even from that perspective, it might just make sense to close it for a while and just kind of sit back on your laurels and be like, you know what, let's kind of wait on replacing this, since, it was just eating up a ton of cost while not really doing anything for you. But you also have to consider that they may have grander plans for the space. It might not necessarily be that they want to replace it with Harry Potter or replace it with a one-off attraction. They might have grander ideas in mind. So, jumping off of this, the other more or less concrete option that, I speculated about in my What Ride Could Close Next in Universal Studios Orlando video was that maybe Fear Factor and Men in Black go together and, you go ahead and you build a new immersive land in the back of the park there, basically getting rid of the entire World Expo land of the park. And on top of this, like I said earlier, by leaving it vacant for a period of time, that could allow time, for Men in Black to eventually close, and then you turn the whole back part of the park into its own immersive land for some other major IP. So, bottom line is this. I mean, there's plenty you can do with Fear Factor Live's spot. There's plenty you can do. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I think that's a big reason why, I'm so conflicted about what really is going to be the best choice for them going forward with this plot. And, I'm not convinced that it's Harry Potter. I'm really not. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, because honestly, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this. What should Universal do with the Fear Factor plot? There's so many things they can do. The possibilities are infinite. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. And with that being said, I will see you all next time. Peace.